Yeah, but it was definitely like middle school was when it was at its worst, where I was like, I would be called like, "Oh, you sound like a broken record," or "You sound like you're in a in a in a massage chair."
Kids are fucking ruthless. I
I
swear to
know,
God.
bro. It was terrible. Yeah.
Welcome back to Other People's Lives. I'm Joe Santagato.
I'm Greg Dybec.
For anyone out there that would like to be a guest on our show, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Our email is oplpodcast@gmail.com. Just send us an email and we'll get back to you.
Yes. Today, we're speaking to a young man named Nolan who reached out to us about living with a stutter. His email subject read, "Living with a stutter, one of the few disabilities that exist as a laughing stock." And he's here today to talk about his journey with a stutter and moments, as he described in his email, where there's so much pain and effort just to say your own name. So, Nolan, we really appreciate you coming on the show to share all of this with us today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. This is awesome.
Yeah, of course. So, according to your email, you've been stuttering or stammering your entire life. I'm curious if you're able to recall when you first became self-aware of the disability and what some of your initial thoughts and feelings may have been.
Sure. Yeah. So, I don't really remember this too well, but according to my parents, I've been stuttering. Like my stutter first came around when I was in about first grade ish. And, so the thing with having stutter is that there is a strong genetic component to it. And, it's like when you're a younger kid like that, like you may have a harder time saying certain sounds or something. And with my dad, he kind of had his stutter for a little bit, like around the same time. So it just kind of didn't really raise too many concerns that like, it's like, oh, he'll, like it has to only be around for a bit and then it'll be fine. And that's what happened for a bit. I had it for probably about like a school year ish, but it was sometime during second grade. It came back, and it was during I don't really want to dive like too much in depth as to why, but there was a pretty heavy traumatic thing that had been going around the time. It was like towards like the end of second grade. And that had caused it to come back. And I have been stuttering like that from that point on. But what I find kind of interesting though, is that I remember being in speech therapy from pretty much like that point on, like once a week, I would just go to see a speech therapist of some kind, but I don't remember it being like a thing or it like hurting my life or it even like crossing my mind as like a disability that I may have until like middle school ish. Cause that's when, that's when kids started to be like really mean and would like make jokes about it and stuff. And that's when I remember that, like, that's when I have the most, looking back on it, like the most vivid memories of having like the most difficulty trying to like speak in class, trying to say my name, trying to read out loud, trying to give like a presentation. And then, just having those problems in class. And I think that's where a lot of the troubles of the stutter really started to show itself, where it became more than just a speech impediment. It started to become more, it affected more like my self-worth, my self-esteem, and just my general view of myself. Cause it's like, if I had a hard time even just talking to my classmates or just trying to read out loud, just like all the other kids in my class can, then that the feeling of like in competency, and you aren't able to do things just like everyone else can. When I know I'm just as smart and I'm just as physically able as has anyone else, it's just that I have a problem with speech, and that how just a speech impediment can have such a deep-rooted negative effect on who you are as a person.
Is there specific words or sounds that are more difficult for you to say, or is it random?
It's pretty random, I would say. I think like the one that I point to the most is like a hard vowel. sounds. So like apple or yeah. So like I just take like that word, for example. If you get stuck on that one, it's like it kind of gets caught in your throat. You're kind of like choke on your own word a little bit. So it's like apple, right? And it's like really hard to like push the air through it. So I think those I probably have the most challenge with. So like apple or like any other, I don't know what other word you would call it, but like a harder vowel sound, I think I probably have the most trouble with. And besides that, I think it just kind of depends on the situation at hand.
Yeah, I was going to ask that about triggers. Like, do certain scenarios, like other than just words or sounds themselves, like certain scenarios, kind of increase the stutter?
Yeah. So just I've found that over time that if I'm stressed or if I'm pretty hungry or if I don't get enough sleep or just anything that would like tip me off of my regular homeostasis, I guess, that will tend to make it worse throughout the day. And then there's also like or just like what you had saw before we had gone on the call. It's like a first impression and talking on the phone are probably two of the worst ones for me. Because they can be kind of challenging. Because with first impression, it's like the stress of like, oh, I have to give my name. I'm not so great at giving my name. What will this person think of me? Oh, how they laugh at me? Will they have like a worser kind of opinion? And then I have to explain to them, oh, I have a stutter, and then it becomes like a whole thing. And so they're just having that kind of fear. And then I think just talking on the phone just comes from it's harder. It's like you I don't know. It's like it's harder to replicate that face-to-face interaction. So it's kind of harder to like read what the other person is like trying to say. And it's harder to like communicate that you have a stutter when on their end, it'll just sound like on their end, it doesn't sound like a stutter. It just sounds like you're just having a hard time saying what you're saying. Like they don't connect that it's a stutter. But if you were to see my face when I stutter, it's pretty clear, like, oh, he has a speech impediment. So those two, and I think I'm trying to think what else. Giving like my name or trying to like give my food order like at a restaurant, or if I were to get like the number 3, or if I'm at like, or say like I want the steak or something, like those can also be pretty hard too.
Do you know when you are about to stutter? Like, is it something that you can physically feel, or is it just happening sort of like in real time and you can't really tell, when it's going to be, when it's about to happen?
Yeah. With cases like my name, or I'm like at a restaurant or something, I can like feel the tension in my body like already, because it's just like, oh, I've done this so many times now. I know that it's just like, I can feel it coming up. But like just then when I got stuck on the word food, I didn't know that was coming. Like that just kind of happened. So it is both, just depending on what's going on.
And you mentioned self-worth earlier. Can you describe the feeling when you know that you're about to enter maybe social scenario where people are going to find out that you're stuttering for the first time? Because a lot of your email was about that too, just sort of the self-worth, I think doom and gloom, as you put it, and how much it can affect your social life. So what are the emotions that are sort of building up before you enter one of those scenarios?
It's just a lot of anxiety kind of thing. So it's like imagining like you're giving a talk for a bunch of people, and that dread and like that kind of like second guessing of yourself, like, oh, do I look good? Do I even know what I'm talking about? Oh, like you like start to have those like second doubts. It's kind of like that, more on like a personal level, I guess. So if like I just say that like I meet a new person or something, and they just say, hey, my name is blah, blah, blah. What's yours? It's like already like in that moment, I know I have to give my name. And it's so hard for me to say like, hi, my name is Nolan. And it's usually like pretty obvious. And it's like, most times the other person doesn't like know how to respond. Cause it's like, it's pretty rare, like, to have a stutter. So to try to make a joke about it and be like, haha, whatever. And it's like it's like being constantly reminded at every turn that you have a disability with your speech and that there's no turning away from it, and you have to re-explain it, and you're reminded of it all, because it's like you can't get away from talking, like that's like the basis of communication with, like, just telling about your life, that like you have to speak, like you have to talk. Yeah, so it just kind of like that, like, doom and gloom thing that I had brought up before. It's like you feel that dread, and it's like, oh my god, not again, that you just have to go through, and then you're just like reminded of the part of yourself that you're the most ashamed of.
Yeah, I mean, and also you mentioned that you've been like dealing with this for a while, and you were doing speech therapy. Did you find that was helpful? Like, was it worse at one point and now it's kind of getting a little better, or is it just kind of been the same the entire time?
Oh, it has definitely gotten like way better, like way better over time. Like, I'd say, like, at my worst, it was probably like in middle school, probably like sixth, seventh, eighth grade was when I was at my worst, where I felt like I couldn't say, I couldn't complete a thought without being stuck on a word. But now there are like even days, or like I can go like up to a week at times, where I like forget that I have a stutter. And it's just like, I have learned that in those cases, it's usually times where like I feel good and I like feel confident, I feel cool. And it's like, I don't personally identify with the stutter in such a weird way, where it's like kind of goes on the back burner. But as soon as I'm like reminded of my speech impediment, and I'm reminded of the like social dread and the like, oh, I'm scared of what this person will think of me, then those thoughts start to creep back in a little bit. And then through those doubts is when I start to stutter more.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned, maybe bullying or people making fun of you because of your stutter. Is that something that you have experienced pretty frequently throughout your life?
It definitely stopped probably like towards the back end of high school, because at that point I just like had good enough friends that didn't really care about my speech impediment. But like it'll still come up from time to time, where like a friend will like make a lighthearted joke or something with like, I know they had like no ill intent to like actually like hurt me in some way, but it's like I need to have that conversation with them to be like, hey, you're all good, but that definitely like crossed a line for me. Yeah, but it was definitely like middle school was when it was at its worst, where I was like, I would be called like, oh, you sound like a broken record, or you sound like you're in a massage chair. It would be like, but Benny and the Jets, like all those things, like pretty much whatever would be like just thrown at me just to hurt my feelings, I guess, or something. Yeah.
Kids are fucking ruthless.
I know, bro. It was terrible. Yeah.
That's horrible.
Oh my God.
How were you able to get past that, at that time, or did it really have an effect on you?
I stopped being friends with them at some point. I think that was just kind of the line that it broke. And like, what I think, honestly, like at the time, I didn't even realize the effect that it was having on me, because like they were my friends and I was like 12, 13, whatever. And I just thought like, oh, these are my friends. We're just like making fun of each other. And it's like, oh, it's all good. But then I didn't even realize till I was probably like 17, 18. I was like, wow, that had a profound effect on how I view myself and my relationship with my stutter in such a negative way. Yeah, I mean, like over time, you do have to develop like a kind, like you kind of have to develop a toughness to it in some way, where it's like, I know if I raise my hand in class or something, right, that like, if this is the first time I'm speaking for this group of people, or just the first time I get caught on a word, like the 20, 30 people in the classroom will be like, oh, what was that? And like, I'm aware of that, or at least like those are the thoughts that are going on in my head. Like maybe not that many people like actually care, but having that sensitivity to it of like, oh man, I hope they don't view of me as lesser. Like you kind of have to navigate those emotions in a way. Cause it's like, if you're so scared of other people's opinions of you in that way, then you'll never talk ever. And at some point you're going to have to overcome that fear a little bit.
Did you ever go through a period of time where that was like kind of how you dealt with it, where you're like, you know what, I'm just going to talk less, but then eventually you're kind of like, well, fuck that. I'm not going to let these people sort of silence me. I'm going to just do my thing.
Yeah. I want to say it was like, middle school, early half of high school. I think looking back on it was like, I really started to like, I put together that whenever I spoke, I got teased for it and I got made fun of for it. So if like you repeat that loop over and over again of like, I would talk and then I would be made fun of, then like eventually I'm just going to start to talk less. That said though, I am really lucky for having like my family has been nothing but kind and supportive for me the whole time. So I was able to get like a break away from like the high school environment and all that. But yeah, I think it really hit me like pandemic era, where I like getting that back step away from everything and like, wow, I just am not, my relationship with speaking and talking just throughout my day-to-day life is just not healthy right now. And like having that realization has led me to have a way healthier view of where my speech is at.
That's amazing to hear, honestly. I'm curious too, you know, you just talk about these people, and I guess that just comes with age. Like sometimes you just realize your friends or the people you think are your friends are just ignorant idiots, and you kind of just cut them out and move on, and circles become smaller. And it's you know, healthy to realize that sometimes. But it's crazy. Like obviously middle schoolers can be ruthless, like Joe said, and I'm sure, you know, the big misconception is someone hears you stutter and maybe relates it to your cognitive ability. And like you said in the beginning, like, you know, you're just as smart as anyone and just as capable. It's literally just a speech impediment. Are there any other misconceptions around stuttering that you've come across?
Yeah, so that's definitely a big one for sure. And that's one that will hurt the most, where it was like my most recent job interview I had stuttered twice on my name and the school that I go to now. And I could just like see the person doing the interview, like his eyes just kind of gloss over and him just like zone out, because he just like immediately just like lost his patience and just lost his attention to me of just like, oh, I don't really care about this anymore. And like having that like opinion reflected back at you in such an obvious way, like that definitely hurts a lot. I think one of the ones that I see being asked about a lot is, it's like, say you are my friend and we're like out and about and I get stuck on trying to say something. Like, should you try to say the word that I'm getting stuck on to like help me out, or should you not? And I think that's like, I think people who don't stutter, who have like a person in their lives that does, like, they don't really know what to do. Cause like on the one hand, like you see my face and my body get so tensed up and I'm like really having a hard time, or like I may have a really hard time trying to say a word, but at the same time, you don't want to like interfere on it. And you feel like you might be like overstepping your bounds a little bit. And to that, I'd say it kind of just depends person to person a lot of the time. Like some people don't mind, some don't, but the general conception is that to just let the person ride it out and to just try to build the kind of independence, I guess, to be able to like, I need to work through my words, and for someone to like interrupt me to like say the word that I'm getting stuck on, it's kind of like hucking down on me in a way and trying to like treating me as not a whole person, you know? I'm trying to think of any other misconception, but I think that that's the big one that is asked of us a lot.
We know that staying hydrated and drinking water is a huge part of a healthy lifestyle, but did you know that it's also important to consider the quality of water that we're drinking? I was shocked when I learned that research by the Environmental Working Group found that virtually every home in America has harmful contaminants in its tap water. AquaTrue makes cutting-edge water purifiers, which remove more than 80% of the contaminants found in your tap water. And we're talking about things like chlorine and lead, and just not things that you want to be drinking. And AquaTrue removes 15 times more than the ordinary pitcher filters that you can find online or pretty much in any supermarket. Plus, AquaTrue has a sleek design that looks great in any home or apartment. And the water tastes amazing, better than expensive bottled water. Even your pets will know the difference in the water that they drink if you use AquaTrue. So kick off summer with a new healthy habit by going to aquatrue.com and using the code OPL at checkout to save 20% off your AquaTrue purifier today. That's AQUATRU.com and enter code OPL at checkout to save 20% on any AquaTrue purifier today. And each purifier comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, and it also makes a great gift for someone. So save today with code OPL at checkout.
Yeah, and how has this sort of affected, different buckets of your life? Like, like dating, for instance, has this been like sort of make it like much more difficult?
Oh, it totally makes it like way harder. Cause like, I think like every dude has like fear in the back of their head of like, if they try to approach a girl, or they just try to like shoot their shot or whatever, that they'll get hijacked in that fear of like, oh, but what if she turns me down or whatever? And like, I think that that's a completely normal thing to have, but it's like with the speech impediment, it goes an extra layer deeper than that of like, I may be like laughed at in my face just because it's like, hi, I'm Nolan, and I just had a hard time getting that out. And just like having that confidence to like still do it anyways is like still really hard. And that's like definitely an avenue where I have the most trouble with. And then for job interviews too, that's also a big one too. Where you may be like, you may be like perfectly qualified and you may like hit all the right notes, but because it takes you longer to like get your thoughts out, you may be viewed at like kind of back onto your point that it's like it can be almost reflected negatively on your cognitive abilities, that it just automatically puts you at like a bad perception of those that you may be trying to like impress or something.
Yeah. And yeah, it seems like you've come a long way since the middle school days that we've discussed in, I can't think of a better phrase than finding your voice, but would you say now at this stage that, you have a generally positive outlook on things and that you're, pretty hopeful all around?
Yeah. Like, I'm in college now, and I definitely look back on where I was at before, and I still feel that confidence to like do that job interview anyways, and to like to raise my hand in class anyways, and to give that presentation, and to like not to identify with it that much, and to not have that constant doom and gloom hose me view of like, oh, I can't do it. It'll be like so much harder for me. But it's like, I think it's really important to work on your speech. You need to accept that you have a stutter. And I think that that's like the biggest kind of hurdle that a lot of people who have a stutter, like that's like the biggest thing. Cause it's like your immediate reaction is to fight against it, right? Like, why do I have this? Why me? Why is it so much harder? And you like try to fight against your stutter. But having that inner conflict with yourself where you're like every social interaction, it's like, it's just such a conflict in your head of like, what can I say? Like, oh, I might get stuck on this word. So instead of saying conflict or like inner conflict, I might say like inner turmoil instead. And like, you like swap your words out mid sentence and all that. And like, that can just be so exhausting. And from what I found, it's only after accepting that you do have a stutter and speaking anyways, is that's when the breakthrough in speeches. And it's actually really interesting too, because I think I mentioned in the email that I did hypnosis for my stutter, and that was such a crazy breakthrough for me, because like it didn't cure it obviously, but it's like I was after my third session of it. I remember I like came out of the hypnotic trance of it, and I like felt this like lightness in my chest and in my body that I had never felt before. And I was like, oh my God, I can't stutter anymore. I'm cured. I'm like, oh my God. And it kind of is like this mind over matter thing in a weird way. Cause it's like me talking just this past bit, I haven't got stuck once, you know, but like there were other times where I did. So it just all kind of depends. But then after that, I had like a 2-hour high after I came out of the trance, like, yeah, I'm the king of the world. Yeah. And then I took a nap. And then when I woke up, it was like back again. Shit.
Is stuttering something that you can eradicate completely?
I don't think so, but there are a lot of famous people who stutter that you wouldn't even know stutter. Like, I think that Steve Harvey has been like most vocal about his, and it's like you see him do his shows or whatever, and you wouldn't even know that you wouldn't even know that he has a stutter. But I would suspect that there might be like certain times where it might be so rare, but it might happen where he will get stuck on a word again. So I don't think it's something that can be like cured or completely gotten rid of, but there can definitely be a point where like you are just as fluent as any other person. Cause it's like your average person will get stuck on their words from time to time. You know, it's not like a black and white thing where you're either perfectly fluent or you're not, you know, like a lot of people get caught up on their words like all the time. So like, I think there can get to a point with your stutter where you can reach that point. But I don't think it is something that can be like perfectly like cleansed out of you or something.
Yeah. I know Joe Biden is a famous example as well. I know you listed in your email too, Ed Sheeran, Emily Blunt, Samuel L. Jackson. I've heard those names before too. So yeah, that's super interesting.
I've never even noticed that any of these people had a stutter. That's interesting. I was actually going to ask you that too. If, you know, you're kind of optimistic that with the progress that you've made so far with therapy, that if you think, you know, in 5 years from now or in 10 years from now, that it would be sort of almost unrecognizable.
Yeah, I think that that's the trajectory that it's going, which is really crazy to like think, because like after all this time, like I've just associated it like as a part of me in a way where I just like I can always expect that like, hey, I might have like a few good days in a row or like a really good week, but I eventually will crash down and like I'll have it again. But it's like my fluency that I've had now is like way better than it was like a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And the track that I'm going, it's definitely, I feel pretty hopeful that it's gonna reach that point. But it's also important to note that not everyone is at that same point. Like there are people who have that their speech impediment's way worse than mine. And I'm sure that you guys have heard that it's like a lot of men will hire an escort or something and just only want to talk, because it's like that's like their only place where they can actually like talk to a human being without having that kind of just like constant social pressure on them, because it just takes them way longer to get a word out or whatever it may be.
Yeah, no, totally, man. But we really hope that it gets there for you. But it is just so inspiring to hear, and it's such a win to even get to the place that you're at now. You know, just the day-to-day communication and, you know, not feeling that embarrassment or feeling that shame and just pushing forward to, you know, raise your hand, answer the question, go on the job interview and, you know, get over those sort of daily hurdles is just incredible. I think that's something that we all deal with. Honestly, it's as simple as worrying about how others perceive us, and you've sort of had that extra obstacle in your life, and to, get to that point where you have that self-confidence, that self-worth, it's just truly incredible to hear.
Well, yeah. Thank you so much for all the kind words. Like, I highly appreciate it. And it took a long, long time of just practicing what I had learned in speech therapy, and trying all kinds of other alternative speech therapy things just to see what worked and what didn't. And just trying to put myself out there. Yeah, no. And like, you are totally right too, that like most people feel that same kind of way. And like rates of homeliness are on the rise, like so hard. And it's like everyone, I think, to their own degree, has their fear of being perceived and being judged, and like the fear of putting themselves out there just to be met with shit back. Right. Yeah. So I think that what the stutter has taught me is definitely more of a universal, or it can be more of a universal thing, like you had kind of brought up, which is still even crazy to me that like I get into those moods where I look back on myself and like, wow, I really was unhappy for a long time, and to be able to like pretty confidently put that behind me is just like such a gratifying thing, for sure.
Do you have like any advice for anyone who may be listening who's kind of going through the same thing? I know you talked a lot about like the sort of like social pressure that it sort of like puts on you, and how you can kind of get down on yourself. But is there any sort of advice that you would give to anyone that may be going through a similar situation?
Yeah, I would say the one thing I would say is to just, I mean, it's going to sound so cliche, but to just never give up on yourself, and to understand that like you, with work and with patience and with a lot of low moments, you can really work on it. And also I think it's really important too, to find your people, because while I had my family and I have a load of amazing friends that I have now, I know for sure I was at certain points where I didn't have that many people in my corner. I know there's a lot of people out there who are in that same kind of boat, where they just don't feel that comfort to be themselves without the fear of their speech impediment. So like, even if it's just like like I am part of there's a subreddit and a Discord server that I'm in for having a stutter, and those crowds are just so nice and understanding, because like they have lived through it too, and to be able to like have a place to vent and have a place to talk to, and to even like have a place where you can like practice talking with other people, and you all can like get into a group and all practice your speaking skills together. It's I think my biggest piece of advice is to just make those connections happen, and to kind of desensitize your body from the stress that you feel, or like for example, like the stress that I feel when I have to give my name. Like that's a thing that I can practice. And like even like last week, I just like walked around and I just like, hey, I'm doing a speech therapy exercise. Hey, mind if I give you my name real quick? And for the first person I did that with, I was shitting bricks, bro. Like that was fucking terrifying to be like, oh, not only am I approaching like a stranger, but now it's like, hey, I have a speech impediment. I just like throw all this on them. But like everyone I did that with was just so kind and understanding. And to be like, oh yeah, of course. And I was like, hi, my name is Nolan. And then I also get my last name too. And they were like, wow, hi Nolan, nice to meet you. My name is Roy. Or like, and I was like, wow, it's like most people can be good if given the opportunity, and those people who like laugh and they are a dick about it probably are just misinformed people who just don't have anyone in their life who has a speech impediment, so they just don't know that it's even a thing that even is a disability. So my advice would be to just like find your crowd and to try to push yourself in ways to not let the like doom and gloom of like, oh no, I can't do anything, to like try to fight that off as best you can.
Amazing, dude. The fact you push yourself to do that too and just go talk to strangers, that's crazy. That's like, that would be hard for anyone. Wow. Amazing, man. I mean, this whole conversation has been super informative and just really uplifting. And yeah, I mean, we're rooting for you on this journey, but it's just amazing to hear that you're in a good place. And I think that advice will go a long way to a lot of people listening, whether they struggle with speech impediments or not. I think Find Your People is huge, finding that community, finding the people, and what you touched on earlier, shedding the people who clearly aren't your people. It's not always easy, but important part of life sometimes. So we honestly just can't thank you enough for coming on, being vulnerable, sharing all these details, all these emotions. We really, really appreciate it. And we know that this is going to help a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, thank you so much for having me on. This was a really cool experience too, because to be completely honest, I approached this kind of as a way to practice my speech skills when talking on the phone. Because it's like, not only is this talking on the phone, not only will I have to make a first impression, but I'm talking to people that I've been a fan of for at least a few years now, and to like work on reconditioning my body to not be so tense in those things. I am really grateful. And then even outside of that too, I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to speak on what it's like to have a stutter and to help advocate for people who do have speaking disabilities, and also to just people that just have a hard time connecting with other people like that. Like you said, that's just such a big thing right now that a lot of people are having a hard time with right now. And it's really, and I think it's just a really important thing to help fight for sure.
Yeah, dude. Well, thank you for coming on again. Like Greg said,
of course.
Think this is definitely gonna, the best part about this show, usually with things like this too, that you don't really like think about, because like you said, it's pretty like rare, and now more people will just have awareness, and will be a little more thoughtful if they are, approached by someone with a stutter or something like that. So we appreciate you coming on, and yeah, man, thank you. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too, guys.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye. Well, if he was using that as practice, I would say he did an amazing job on that phone call. That's for sure.
Yeah, I feel like at a certain, like, I feel like I could not, like already, I feel like I don't really hear it. Mm-hmm. Sorry, my dog is scratching his face. But yeah, you don't really like hear it after a while. You're just kind of like, whatever. And he's also very well spoken. And you can tell that sometimes he gets caught on certain words. But I mean, that is just like a fascinating thing to me to think about, that like it's almost like not having control over like a function that you would take for granted, mm-hmm. if you don't deal with it. But just like having to try really hard to get certain words out randomly, like you don't know when it's going to happen. Like, that's wild.
Yeah, that is something we take for granted for sure every day. But yeah, it's amazing to me speaking to people like him, where it feels so random. It's like, why Nolan? Like, why does Nolan stutter and why don't we stutter? And it's just something that, and he obviously had his moments, and it's understandable, that can get you so down and that can make you just feel like a victim of this thing. But the extent he's gone to just find that confidence in himself, to put himself in situations like going up and talking to strangers, it's just amazing. He just has such an extra hurdle to get over with something that's so, simple for so many of us, and just saying our name, communicating, meeting someone for the first time. And yeah, just like I told him, it's just inspiring to hear, what he's doing. And he's finding all of that strength within himself, despite that disability, to just improve this and just make it work and fit his lifestyle and not let it become his identity. So I love those conversations so much. Yeah.
And like, I didn't really think about it until you started talking about it, but you know, obviously like kids are pretty ruthless. They'll make fun of you for fucking everything. And something like speech is interesting because he can control it, and he controls it by just not talking. And that's such like a vital part of life, you know, to be able to communicate with people. And, you know, that's how, you know, that's just part of it, like a huge part of it when you think about it. But to fight, you're going to like fight the urge to talk, or like you're less inclined to talk because you know that people are going to hold it against you or whatever. Like that's a hard thing to kind of overcome, especially when you're in 6th grade. Like to get to where he is now and, you know, working on it and, you know, with therapy, and optimistic about the fact that like one day maybe you won't even notice that he has a stutter. That's all really cool. But, you know, we appreciate him coming on. For anyone else that would like to be a guest on our show, reach out to us. Our email is oplpodcast@gmail.com. Just send us your story and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram, TikTok at OPL Podcast. You could head over to patreon.com/OPL show as well. And that is all that we have for you this week.
Yep. See you guys next time.